Common Cause New York and Common Cause and Consumers Union are working to sponsor similar forums in other boroughs around the city. We're here tonight to listen and to hear the concerns of the public about the build-out of Verizon FiOS. 6 years ago, Common Cause, Consumers Union, and several other organizations worked together to influence the shape of the franchise agreement that the Bloomberg administration reached with Verizon to offer fast broadband and cable television services to every residential household and all residential dwelling units in New York. And the deadline that was in the agreement was June 30, 2014. So they had that amount of time to do it. They later extended it for 3 more months because of Hurricane Irene and Hurricane Sandy and a labor action that took place, and the city agreed to extend it by 3 months. But we're here now, 9 months later, and the city published on June 18th an audit of the Verizon FiOS agreement, which some of you may have seen, which was harshly critical of Verizon's performance. And we know that to be the case at Consumers Union because many of our members have written and told us that they're having trouble getting access to an effective choice of broadband and cable providers in New York City. When you sign a franchise agreement, you make certain representations and promises, and New York City grants the right of way to dig up the streets and string cables throughout the city, dig through people's backyards, and so on and so forth. And for us, we were quite excited at Consumers Union about the prospect that customers would finally have an effective choice of broadband and cable services. For all too long, telecommunications have been a monopoly-provided service for many customers in New York State, and finally that we seemed on the corner of a threshold of turning that corner and actually bringing effective choice and competitive options to everyone. But sadly, that promise has not been realized. And so in the audit, if you go through it, you find the city using terms like egregious failure to describe Verizon's performance. They indicate that service is unavailable at many residential addresses, that Verizon put up great difficulty in opening up its books to the city, so we don't know exactly the extent of the problem, but it seems to be quite significant that thousands and thousands of customers have sought service and not been able to attain it. A problem made even worse by Verizon's failure to consistently track requests from prospective customers. So if you're a customer seeking service, they did not necessarily keep a log of your request, and they did not necessarily follow up with you. And there is evidence that more than 75% of 40,000 non-standard requests that the people were waiting at least a year and were still outstanding. So what we are here tonight is we want to hear the concerns from people who had specific problems trying to arrange for a Verizon service. And we are hopeful that if the public speaks up and makes noise about these issues, this is a problem that can be corrected. And we do need to correct it because in the 21st century, fast broadband ought to be a right for everyone. We know that 22% of households in New York City do not have an internet connection, including 36% of families living below the poverty line. And so for people who are trying to go to a community college or to arrange for social services or to enroll in New York State of Health, having an internet connection is of course essential. So we at Consumers Union will pay close attention to what you say tonight, and we'll work very hard with Common Cause and Gale Brewer to follow up and press Verizon to finish the build out and deliver on what they promised to the people of the city of New York. So now I'd like to turn it over to Josh Mumm, the outreach manager for Common Cause.
All right, thank you, Chuck. So my name is Josh Mumm. I am the outreach manager for Common Cause New York. And Common Cause New York is a citizens advocacy organization. We advocate for an open, participatory government and civic institutions that create a strong democracy that all can participate in. And so you may ask yourself why an organization like this would get involved with a case like this, which is about expanding broadband access and cable access to all homes. And we see it as this. It's that in the 21st century, as Chuck was alluding to, a strong telecommunications infrastructure is essential to a healthy society and a healthy democracy. And we also feel that all should have access equally to the services and products that are becoming available, and that they should be reliable and they should be affordable, and there should be competition that ensures these things. And too often we find that this is not the case. And you know, we're not anti-FiOS, we're not anti-Verizon. We actually support it. We think that all should be able to get it. So with that said, we did a survey of our members back in March to learn more about their experiences with being able to receive FiOS. And we had two surveys. One was a survey that was for folks who had FiOS. We asked them about their experience. How long did it take to get it? Are you happy with your service? And many of them said they came to my house in 2 weeks, did a great job, and I'm happy with the product. It's fast and reliable. On the other hand, we had many more people fill out the survey, of course, that said, I don't have FiOS. And reading through some of their responses, it became particularly alarming. We had folks who have waited years for it, folks who have talked to technicians who have said, it's just not coming to your block, or it's just not coming to your home, not able to find a reason why. And then we followed up and found more stories, and particularly strong cases of people that, for no apparent reason, and things that seemed to clearly violate the franchise agreement, were unable to access FiOS. And so this is a case that has strong implications for our regulatory systems and our ability to regulate the telecommunications industry. So we want to open up this forum and hear from folks. Have you had FiOS? Is it working for you? Have you not had it and wanted to get it? Have your neighbors been able to get it and you haven't? And how do you feel about that? So with that said, this is an open public forum. You will all have a chance to speak. There's a speakers list, and we'll go through that later. But first and foremost, I want to introduce the borough president, Gale Brewer, who's been a strong ally of ours on this case and on this work, and for all Manhattanites. So with that being said, I will introduce Gale Brewer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I am honored to be here. I want to thank Consumers Union, Chuck Bell, and Common Cause, Josh Mum, and Susan Lerner for all that you do on this topic. I also particularly want to thank Manhattan Neighborhood Network and the director of this center as part of M&M's Zenaida Mendez, whom we all adore. We're here because of an issue that has attracted a lot of attention, and it's problems with the rollout of the Verizon FiOS network, although there are certainly people who have not had problems. I have emails on both sides of the issue. And I want to thank Verizon for being here tonight and engaging with us on our concerns, because I have to say they're always responsive in terms of taking the issue. Doesn't always get resolved, but they certainly listen. I think that we all know, because it's been well documented, that the vast majority of New Yorkers have one or maybe two viable options when it comes to cable, internet, and phone service, although it does feel like a monopoly to many of us. And as was said earlier, in 2008, Verizon signed a franchise deal to bring FiOS network to the 5 boroughs, promising important new competition to the telecom marketplace. And I remember well that discussion because I was on the city council, and I was either currently at that point chair of the technology committee, or I can't remember if it was government operations or technology, but I certainly was very involved with supporting the efforts to make the franchise as equitable as possible, certainly to support public access, to support the city's needs, and at the same time make sure that it went through. It took a very long time to go through. But for many New Yorkers, there is still no access to FiOS. And as Verizon has learned, installing fiber in a market like New York City is very complex. Verizon often alleges that owners and co-op boards and condos have put up roadblocks to installation. Buildings have countered that Verizon damages their property or demands exclusive access to a building in exchange for installation. These are serious allegations, and ones that I don't know personally, but they come up. They're brought up a lot. So issues with installing FiOS are frustrating for many of my constituents who rely on Verizon's aging copper infrastructure for phone service. Residents do contact me claiming months-long phone outages, lines getting crossed, and perhaps most concerning allegations of we've even heard phantom 911 calls from buildings in the middle of the night, and there's been nobody calling. So we always have to worry about public safety and highlight the need for Verizon to provide adequate maintenance on its copper lines, even as it focuses on the switch to a fiber optic network. I want to be short in my comments, but to close with my hopes that tonight is productive, substantive. We don't want to point fingers and argue in the press. And I hope that we can figure out specific problems with the FiOS installation and come up with some real solutions. I want to echo what Josh Munn said, which is that we all want competition. We want competition. We want FiOS to be successful. We want Time Warner or Charter or whatever it's going to be successful. I'm one of these people who loves the road to City Hall. I am addicted to Errol Lewis on Time Warner. So, but as people point out, we still want competition, because if FiOS is successful, then my Time Warner bill will go down. Well, that makes sense. And if, New Yorkers, a lot of New Yorkers want FiOS for all the reasons that are obvious to you, and they want to be able to get it. So we want to eliminate the barriers. We want to cut out the rhetoric. We want to find a way to deliver service to all who want it. So I want to thank you all for being here. You could be doing something else. You're making the effort to be here tonight. And then, I don't know if she's here, but Regina Smith, it's her birthday today. She's outside on a brand new bicycle, so she wanted to make sure it didn't disappear. So she's outside. But she's somebody who is really well known in the Harlem community, in the business community, and she too has made the effort to be here tonight. So happy birthday to Regina. And now we're going to begin listening to you. And thank you all for being here tonight.
So before we open up to public comments, I did just want to also mention that, so in addition to Gale Brewer, I'd spoken to a number of elected officials, state senators, assembly members, as well as city council members who weren't able to make it tonight, but who had expressed to me a deep gratitude for holding this forum because they have had numerous complaints from their constituents, sometimes dozens of complaints from folks who have been waiting long periods of time and have, for no real reason, not been able to get FiOS. And they're looking for answers, and so hopefully we can try to figure some of those out tonight. I want to also just quickly introduce to speak Verizon State Government Affairs Representative, Patrick Lepinas. Thank you, Patrick.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Lespinas, and I'm with Verizon. Thank you, Borough President Brewer and others for organizing this event and giving us the opportunity to hear your concerns. You should know that Verizon is a strong New York City-based company. We have operated in the city for more than 100 years. Our headquarters is located here. We have about 12,000 employees who live in New York City. Many retirees and their families are here too. Our commitment to the city is unwavering, and our landline and wireless networks are intertwined with the operations of the city every minute of every day. Our installation of fiber around the city and the associated rollout of FiOS services, including deployment of video services pursuant to the Cable Television Franchise Agreement, is unprecedented. In fact, it's the single largest communications project of its kind in any city in United States history. No other cable company in the city, or any other technology company for that matter, has undertaken this impressive initiative across all 5 boroughs. There are hundreds of thousands of customers across the city using these services today. To date, we have spent $3.5 billion on this project, and this number is growing. This installation of a fiber network throughout all 5 boroughs has not only brought a new, valuable, and competitive set of communication services to New Yorkers, but it also is providing the city a resilient, dependable, and reliable network. It is a network that helps to keep New York City as the premier city in the country and the world. We are proud of this investment, of what we have done for the city, and we are most proud of our valuable employees who have helped us build this futuristic network. By undertaking this years-long massive upgrade of our network, we have kept good, high-paying jobs in the city. Having said that, if this was an easy task, everybody would be doing it. We are keenly aware that our FiOS services have been in the news over the past couple of weeks. While we disagree with many of the characterizations contained in those reports, we are listening, and we're working every day to bring FiOS services to more people in New York City. We have covered all boroughs with fiber, but we realize there is more work to do to improve our processes. As we have said repeatedly, the challenge we face in New York City, unlike anywhere else, is getting cooperation from landlords and property owners to bring fiber into their buildings. It also means gaining permission from adjacent properties to pass our fiber facilities through their basements or backyards. It's a daunting task, but it's also one that is community-based. In many cases, neighbors and nearby buildings are key to bringing fiber into another building. And events like this help to raise the awareness in specific neighborhoods and encourage this cooperation. It's also a task that we tackle every day by knocking on doors, sending letters and emails, and making calls. In closing, we appreciate and thank you so much for wanting our service. We are here tonight to listen, and we know that many of you have your individual questions. So we've set up an email address, manhattanfios@verizon.com, manhattanfios@verizon.com, that tonight's attendees can use to send their name, address, and contact information. If you provide us with that information, we'll investigate the status about the arrival of fiber and FiOS at your address and provide you with a status update on where we are. We also have flyers available in the back of the room that contain this email address. Again, thank you so much, Borough President Brewer, for hosting this forum and for all of you for attending this evening. Thank you.
If we would be mindful, this is a public forum, and it also is going to be broadcast. So keep your comments polite and respectful to all the folks who are in the room. The second thing is that we don't want to give away the illusion that this is a stage. So if you guys can all walk around the cameras this way, I forgot to mention it, when you come up to speak, that would be very helpful to keep you all from looking like giant monsters on the cameras. Or you can duck, as this gentleman just did. So I'm sorry I didn't mention that earlier, Pat. So at that point, I'd like to bring up our first speaker, a woman named Patricia Lakin. You can go this way. And when you come up to speak, if you could say your name and also say where you live, and then begin your comments, that'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's all yours.
Thanks. My name is Patricia Lakin, and I live at 127 West 77th Street. That's the north side between Columbus and Amsterdam. What happened was I've contacted Verizon because I received in my bill, I have a Verizon landline. I wanted to save money but also have high-speed internet. And that started a process that's been going on for a number of years. At first, I was contacted by someone from Verizon who was working, I guess, with them, a woman by the name of Jessica Nevis, because we all needed to sign, because it's brownstones, the only way at that point I was told that we could have access to FiOS was to go through the backyards. We had signed a slip a long time prior to that. Long story short, I contacted a lot of neighbors. I've lived on the block for 46 years. I know a lot of the neighbors. There is a stable group of people. Many of them want FiOS. And then somehow nothing was happening. I was supposed to be contacted by an engineer to find out the feasibility. Nothing happened. I then found, my husband brought home this Cranes article about the micro-trenching, and I thought, great. We could have the micro-trenching, so anyone building on our block, and this is the north side of the street, could have FiOS. I tried calling the man who was mentioned, the vice president of Verizon, because I was not getting through to anyone or getting any response. And I was told, well, he's a vice president. I can't put a call through to him, nor can I even connect you with his administrative assistant. Okay, so I basically had no one to call. So I then contacted Helen Rosenthal's office, and someone there gave me the name of someone from FiOS. I got his email and phone number. I called the gentleman, emailed him. Lo and behold, I got a phone call from him. And he proceeded basically to tell me that the micro trenching, which was approved, would really not be feasible. It was more advantageous from a financial standpoint for them to go through the backyards. He would get back to me, and he said, you know, there are people who have not given their approval. And he said, and I think probably your block is low priority because there are some people who have not signed, and we're not allowed to say who. And I thought, well, that's an interesting out, because am I forever going to be low priority? They can't reveal the names because maybe I'll attack them. I have no idea what's going on. He said, but you know what, let me find out the status. Can you call me the beginning of the next week? Which I did. I get his voicemail, and the message is, Richards, I forget his last name, his voicemail is full, you will now be disconnected, click. And that's the story. I did then, when I contacted Josh from Common Cause New York, I went again to put up signs. Just all I said was, this is my name, my email. I would like to have FiOS. Is anyone in your building interested? And I will be very polite. But I did hear back from a building on our block that has 28 units, and they're all very, very interested in having FiOS. And they were told by a representative, there is no name, that our street is low priority because their cost-benefit ratio is much more profitable on streets with tall buildings with many residents. And I found out, and I will close with this, that a friend of mine who lives at 175 Riverside had a FiOS representative in their lobby for anyone who wanted to sign up. My friend signed up to reduce her bill and have high-speed internet, which is exactly what I would like. They were given FiOS. They pay, I think, something like $154 a month, and they were given a $400 credit card to thank them for signing up for FiOS. I rest my case.
Great. Our next speaker, Fern Luskin. Fern. Don't forget to come on. And the following person after that will be Kirk Dangler.
Hi, yes, I'm Fern Luskin, and I live at 347 West 29th Street. I just have to say, Verizon, despite its vast resources, and they are vast, read the New York Times article from, I think, last August, yet it doesn't want to replace the old copper wires that used to serve us so reliably. And as I see it, the system is near collapse. For 1.5 years, I have repeatedly endured month-long phone and internet outages, as have my friends and my colleagues. I mean, this is what my life has been like. This is my computer screen in September. No internet access. This in October. I'm trying to write an article. Can't. No internet access. Then, you know, and so on. December. This is what my modem looks like. Two green lights instead of the 3 blinking lights. So, and no one should have to go through what I have. I even had no internet when I had to file my taxes, and I had to go into work to do so on my day off. Complicating matters is that there's a lawsuit filed by the owner of the Xbox, where all the cables that feed 2 blocks of Chelsea reside. And so the owner of that building will not let the Verizon technicians in to the Xbox to repair the cables. So after one of our brutal snowstorms a 1.5 years ago, a technician told me she was only able to find 1 out of 600 cables in that Xbox that could be connected to my phone line. So I just shudder to think of what will happen the next time a major storm settles upon New York City and there are no cables left to restore phone service. Obviously, Verizon wants us to sign up for FiOS instead of continuing to use DSL. The catch is that they have, as you've heard, not yet installed FiOS everywhere. Some buildings on my block have it, some don't. And I've requested it many times from them, and from customer service reps. They say they'll call me back. They never do. I mean, sometimes it's comical. I run after the Verizon trucks asking them. It is scandalous that the company is charging for a service that they are not providing or maintaining, especially, given their cash deposits and real estate. We need strict governmental oversight over Verizon's maintenance of the copper wires, and we need them to install FiOS throughout the city as per their contract. So, thank you.
Did you say how many units in your building? Maybe you said
Just 15. And that's part of the problem that, there's no, it's prohibitively expensive to get cable in my building, through Time Warner, and I really want the FiOS. In small buildings, that's the way it is. So I simply can't afford it. Yeah. So thank you very much for doing this forum and for doing such a fantastic job and everything else, too. Thank you.
I'm Kirk Dangler. I live at 90th Street and First Avenue. I've been in Manhattan for 35 years. I've been a loyal Time Warner customer since 1983. I have had continual problems with Time Warner. And I have said to them repeatedly, if I could switch to FiOS, I would do it in a nanosecond. But every time I call Verizon to connect with FiOS, I get the same response: soon. Okay, now just recently, I was told that there's not going to be any access in my neighborhood, 90th and First, for the next 2 to 3 years, which is unacceptable. With Time Warner, my bill increases consistently. I am so sick of it. This is what I know. FiOS has to be better than Time Warner.
Okay, thank you, Kirk. Our next speaker, Henry Lichtenstein, and then Christina, Galuza. Saluza, sorry.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Henry Lichtenstein, and this is my wife, Pam Pataky, and she's prepared a statement. We live at 152 East 94th Street.
We've been trying to talk to Verizon about getting FiOS for years. And finally, on October 25th, 2012, we got a building newsletter that said it's going to be there in the next year. Obviously, that was bad timing because 4 days later there was Sandy, and schedules went out the window. But first, let me say that we actually respect Verizon's technological expertise and would like to remain the loyal customers we've been for many years. We've had our share of administrative mishaps with various parts of Verizon, but we found the services themselves to perform admirably. This is why it has been so frustrating, especially while being inundated with FiOS advertising at every turn, to not only not have the service, but no clue when we will. Half-fast uploads? Ours are 1/4 fast on DSL, and our DSL is only really good because we can see our central office from our living room window. As it stands now, the implicit message from Verizon is if we want to upgrade our internet service, we should switch to cable. We'd much rather add television to our Verizon services and drop the cable company. Does Verizon really want to test customer loyalty this way? We have signed up several times electronically to be notified. We've received a couple of cryptic messages from Verizon about a problem that neither our board nor our managing agent knew about. And then on November 11th, 2013, we got an email saying the problem was solved. We'll have FiOS soon. Our building signed the papers in February 2014 and told us in March that the installation was expected in September 2014. On February 25th of this year, I spoke to a representative who said she had no indication when FiOS will be, quote, available in your neighborhood. She didn't say that there was any request on record, even though we've asked for notification several times, and she didn't give us any way to make a request. So here we are, well past a couple of deadlines that Verizon themselves apparently set, and we've never gotten even the answer some of these other people have.
And how large is your building?
It was 105 apartments, but there have been double, so we're down to about 90 subscribers.
And you think people in your building would want it? You're not-
I don't really know. We have both Time Warner and RCN, and we've also had quite a bit of turnover the last couple of years, and I don't think people would have moved in if they really wanted FiOS. But we won't know if they don't ask, which they haven't.
Hello, my name is Christina Saluza, and I am the social media manager and marketing manager at the Harlem Business Alliance. When the Harlem Business Alliance opened up Harlem's first co-working space, Creative Workspace at HBA, we needed a high-speed internet provider to give our members the best possible service and co-working experience. We were happy to learn that Verizon FiOS was expanding into our area. Our experience with Verizon FiOS has been enjoyable. Verizon FiOS's internet service is really reliable, and when there is an issue with it, for example, an outage in service, the process to contact a customer service agent, learn about the current status of the problem, and receive updates of when the problem may be resolved was easy and efficient. This is very important to us since most of our members need the internet to conduct their business. Creative Workspace at HBA also hosts internet-based events in our space, such as crypto parties and hackathons. These draw techies from around New York City who use innovation technology every day. Their standards are high, and our internet service has to be excellent to fulfill the needs of their presenters. Our clients and new community partners are impressed to find that we actually have Verizon FiOS, with many wondering when it's coming to their area for business and home use. We proudly have noted on our front door and on Creative Workspace promotional collateral that our high-speed Wi-Fi is powered by Verizon FiOS. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question. Do you find that this is universally appreciated perhaps by the commercial sector? Because I know, I love your organization. So do you find that, like, when you talk to others who are
Other businesses?
that they're also having a good experience?
Yes, the ones who have FiOS, they always have, good experiences. Yeah. We've also heard from like other co-working spaces. They have the same issues, yeah. So thank you.
Great. And if anyone else would like to speak to, there's a few more folks. Feel free to come on up. We certainly have time for it. So the next person I would like to bring up is Brad Usher, and then after that, Fred Schur.
Hi, I'm Brad Usher, and I'm Chief of Staff to State Senator Liz Krueger, and I'm going to speak primarily in that capacity, though I will speak personally briefly. I live in Elmhurst, Queens, in about a 40-unit building. We don't have FiOS. I had Verizon DSL for a very long time until earlier this year. I gave up on it. I now have Time Warner, and I'm, maybe because of how unreliable the DSL line was, I actually am very happy with Time Warner. It's certainly much more reliable than that, but we have never had the FiOS option. But I'm here primarily to speak because we're getting a lot of complaints, and there seems to be a big increase in complaints of people who actually are copper wire users in buildings that have already converted to FiOS and have had both sometimes a long-term problem with difficulty getting problems with service and difficulty getting those problems addressed, and are now being forced to give up the copper lines that they prefer. And I certainly understand Verizon's desire not to continue to support the copper lines, but there are some disadvantages to FiOS. The primary one that constituents are bringing to us is that it doesn't work if the power's out. And since we've all experienced power outages in New York City recently, some of which have gone on for days in our district and even longer further south, but there was parts of Senator Krueger's district lost power for about a week after Sandy. And Verizon's answer is we give you a battery backup that lasts for 8 hours. And I think that we're going to hear, I think, from one of our constituents a little later who can speak from this personally, but Verizon, if they're in implementing this, they need to recognize, particularly in high-rise buildings, that you have people who have been and fear getting stuck again in their apartments where before they could rely on a copper wire that would at least allow them to communicate with the outside world, and they fear that they will lose that with FiOS, and I can report that their experiences in talking to Verizon about their options and are there better battery options or anything like that have not been positive. They've generally been told that it's up to them to figure that out. So while I understand the desire and I think we should all have broadband, getting rid of the copper is also has its costs, and it would be lovely to figure out a way to support both systems. If that's not doable, Verizon needs to figure out ways to ensure the safety of seniors and people with disabilities who rely on their phones for access in emergencies. Thank you.
A regular New Yorker, and she says, although we are not dissatisfied with our FiOS connection, is this on? I think they are. Connection, which we have had since December 2013, we were seriously discouraged by the pressurized oversell Verizon conducted. This included a salesman's statement that copper wires, sort of what Brad was saying, were going to be discontinued soon unless we better switch to FiOS to retain our phone service. When I contacted Verizon, they denied any such knowledge and denied any authorization to any sales reps. But high-pressure tactics, especially threatening, need to be stopped. We are senior citizens, and then they followed up with what Brad stated. So I just want to let you know that Brad's right. Go ahead, sorry.
I can speak to that because actually I received a letter from Verizon giving me an actual cutoff date of, I believe it was August 16th, that I had to have this switch done or I would lose all phone service. So I think that's pretty high-pressure sales tactic too. My name is Fred Scher. I live 1763 2nd Avenue. That's 92nd Street, between 91st and 92nd. And I'm here to speak to Verizon's unwillingness to maintain its copper wiring infrastructure for those residents with serious medical conditions. And as someone who has kept a landline phone, specifically to ensure that I retain uninterrupted phone service, even during an extended electrical outage, I find this to be unacceptable, as you would imagine. And as Brad has discussed, an 8-hour battery backup is obviously not sufficient for people with these type of concerns. And someone even told me that that is kind of sketchy. The Public Service Commission, which I spoke to, has as its public duty to oversee and regulate Verizon and other telecommunication companies. Rubber stamped Verizon's wishes regarding this issue in a case decided in late 2005 and early 2006 to little fanfare. Interestingly enough, I was actually read this by one of the members of the Public Service Commission. There were a pros and a cons section. And the pros were all the things of positives for the fiber optics, which many were, I completely agreed with. But then there was, interestingly, the cons section. And these were considered ancillary issues. And under these ancillary issues were those who had medical devices, and with medical conditions. So you can see how they were really concerned. And I never heard about this. I never knew about this, except for the last 2 or 3 years when you talk about sales pitches. All of a sudden, my service started to go out. It seemed like every 3 months. And it would just go out. All of a sudden, I'd have no dial tone. And I kept calling, and they would have to have somebody out. And I kept asking Verizon, why is this happening? you know, what's the problem? Because is it a wiring problem in the building or an outside wire in the street? And they said, no, it's something to do with the office here. And after a while, a year of this, I became a little skeptical and started to link the two, that I thought that this had something to do with them wanting me to change to fiber optics, because I happen to live in an area and in a very large building where it's very cost effective for them to have put it in 2-3 years ago. So I can't prove that, but to finish, I'm just here to testify that those needing continuous phone service must not be considered an ancillary concern, as you can look up in this case, as I found out from the Public Service Commission. And I think they should be doing their job, which is regulating.
Let me ask you more about this battery, because the same constituent is like you, very planning to make sure that she and he and her husband are safe. So they're nervous about the battery in the sense that they want to make sure their battery's up to date, and they don't know what to do, how to make sure it's up to date. They're worried about that. And do they have to go to some center to charge it? And what they've done is I just think people are amazing how they worry and they follow up to make sure that they are safe. So they switched to FiOS, as I told you, for telephone and computer, but they kept their television on the old system to avoid losing all contacts should some kind of a disaster take place. But do you think the battery is an issue? Do you have to keep it up to date in some way? Charge
I
it?
know nothing about the battery.
Neither do I, but I'm just saying.
That's the problem.
Exactly. Well, I think we're both, and that's what I'm trying to say, is unless there's some information that comes to you about the battery, seniors like these two and others worry that they will not be covered.
Oh, and I think that they have reason to worry, because first of all, there can be an outage that can last a week. How is 8 hours supposed to be sufficient? And I have no idea if these batteries are reliable. They've given out no information. Okay.
I could comment that after Hurricane Sandy, Consumers Union testified before the FCC about the resilience of communications networks. And there were failures both for landline service and for the mobile towers, as many people know, because mobile towers rely on electrical connections to keep working. And we have covered this issue of the battery-powered telephones. If your battery goes out, say at 12 midnight, and you don't realize it. I mean, if the service goes out, electrical service goes out at 12 midnight, and you don't wake up until 7 or 8 in the morning, your battery could be completely dead, and you'd have no phone service whatsoever. So I think we recognize it as Consumers Union that this is a very important emergency service issue, and I agree that these types of issues should be addressed to the Public Service Commission, which is doing a statewide assessments of the telecommunications infrastructure and whether broadband should be considered an essential service. And this issue of connectivity in emergencies is absolutely an issue that they could address. So I would encourage people to Google for the staff telecommunications assessment that the Public Services Commission is doing. They have a comment period until August. And be happy to send our research on this issue to anyone who's interested.
So now Sarah Martin's going to speak.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Sarah Martin. I live at 101 West 147th Street. I moved there last year now. Prior to moving, I had Time Warner and Verizon. But I was having problems with my phone. Well, Time Warner was lousy also, but I was dealing with it. And when I moved, I continued to have trouble with my phone. So I thought it was the phone. I purchased a new phone. It would just cut off anytime, any given time. I could press talk. Sometimes I'll get the person back. Sometimes I get a dial tone or a busy signal. So when I called Verizon, they suggested I switch to FiOS. They said it was the wiring, and that FiOS, that Time Warner was not, Verizon was not investing any more money with new wiring. So my only choice was to switch. So I said, okay, I'll switch, might as well switch the whole thing then, TV, computer, and phone service. I'm still having the same problem. It cuts off anytime it wants to, and I don't know the reason why. And even the television, it freezes, it scrambles. So it's not too much better than Time Warner. It's not the telephone, so it's the wiring. Now, they do the wiring. they said they did rewire that area. So it's, I live in a 27-story building. There's about 6 buildings in the area. And this is on Lenox Avenue near the Hale, but the bus depot that went green. So, but there's problems, and I talked to other neighbors since I've been there. They're having the same problem with FiOS. Okay.
Okay. Does anyone else want to have any comments they would like to make at this point? Sure. We'll start. You in the striped shirt, and then you behind him. You can be on deck next. And then, yeah, just come on up. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Adam Rothschild. I'm actually speaking on behalf of a business, Packet Host Incorporated, in Manhattan at 30 Vesey. And before I get into the comments, I just have a question for the panelists, if that's okay. So, just wondering in terms of possible remedies for dealing with the situation, and something that comes to mind, and I'll preface it by saying that I'm not an attorney, but I am in the industry, I am familiar with the regulatory process, is in February of this year, the FCC came out with the Open Internet Order, and among other conditions in the order, I believe one of the things they said is any incumbent provider of an internet service cannot prohibit its customers from using the service in a lawful manner. And I was just wondering if basically, I mean, let's call a spade, basically. What's happening to Verizon is something that we in the industry call cherry picking, of basically only servicing the most profitable clients. This is why we have some panelists and some commenters basically saying Verizon is all too eager to upsell them on FiOS, while others are saying, sorry, Verizon won't even give us the time of day. So in any event, have you given any thought to filing a complaint before the FCC under that provision?
We haven't looked at that at this point. I mean, I think our focus is, because we have an existing franchise agreement in New York City with Verizon, our focus is really on, let's follow through on the agreement. There are potentially other companies that could have been offered a franchise or could be offered in the future. And so we think that we do need to focus on that framework as sort of the best path in the near term for resolving this. But, you know, it's an interesting idea, and, you know, perhaps others could address it. I don't know if Common Cause
I know
is
my
something.
company would be supportive of it, and if people want to go that route again, to your point, having already exhausted the franchise agreement route, happy to talk, and I think it might be worth considering. And secondly, just a comment is, obviously we've heard from a lot of residences, and as a business owner in the area, I've had a similar but slightly different experience trying to obtain the FiOS service. Basically, well, firstly, just a little bit of background. I mean, we've heard Verizon say, I believe, the official party line. I'm not sure if the gentleman up here earlier mentioned this, but I know it's been a party line of Verizon, is basically that there is no end to the FiOS deployment in sight. Yes, it's going behind schedule. Sometimes people might need to wait for a period of a year or multiple years, but if you keep waiting, you'll receive the service eventually. And that has not been the experience of my company. In fact, we're basically in Lower Manhattan in a relatively small building, but still a building in Lower Manhattan, very close to the World Trade Center. We have submitted a request to Verizon asking when our building would be serviced. In addition, our landlord is extremely amicable and wants to bring the service into the building and is behind us every step of the way, which is, as we've heard, somewhat uncommon and definitely a positive sign for us. And we've received written correspondence from Verizon telling us that in no uncertain terms, and I could forward the letter, it was actually from a senior attorney at Verizon saying in no uncertain terms, FiOS would never be brought to our building. So.
I think one response there too is that in discussing the audit with the staff from the DeWitt, the Department of Information Technology and Telecommunications, and it's a New York City agency that has the public oversight function of, they suggest that customers who want FiOS or who have asked for FiOS and not had a successful experience in getting it implemented, to call 311 or to go to the DeWitt website and document what has happened to you. In the past, I think we've actually received some complaints from people who complained to DeWitt in the past that they were not aggressive in following up either. But I think we have a new administration that is very serious about deploying broadband, both for business and especially to residential customers. So I would urge people, in addition to reaching out to FiOS, I mean, hopefully if you reach out to FiOS and they solve the problem, great, and you don't have to take another step. But because the audit revealed that many inquiries from prospective customers were not logged and were not available in the audit, I think that suggests that we need to document the other service requests. So I would say call 311 if you're having a problem with your Verizon service and you were not able to get satisfaction from the company. And in a business situation, I would encourage you to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's actually good that you mentioned that. That is good advice. I did, in fact, reach out to DeWitt, and I spoke to some gentlemen there, and basically what we were told was basically, I mean, it was, in a way, a very awkward interaction in that really DeWitt, at least to my encounter, and I mean, maybe others have had different experiences, but basically the gentleman I spoke to from DeWitt seemed to be functioning really more as a mouthpiece for Verizon's public relations arm than someone representing his constituency. We were basically told, I mean, I actually forwarded the correspondences from Verizon, and we were told basically, oh, well, it is what it is. Verizon's trying really hard. Maybe they'll get to you. Maybe they won't. And then I asked, well, is there any point of escalation? Is there anyone within Verizon you might know that we could engage? And failing that, would you help us endorse some sort of complaint before the PSC or before the FCC? And we were told no. And then we're sent a list of basically, I believe it was a dozen or so other broadband providers that offered services similar to Verizon, similar speeds, similar level of service, but for about 10 to 20 times the price of FiOS. And this is the FiOS business service, not even the less expensive residential service.
A common theme in many of the stories that our organizations have received is customers are angry, they're disappointed, and they feel somewhat abandoned by the regulators. So I think by having this type of public discourse, hopefully we set a higher expectation for both what public agencies will do and what private companies will do. So thank you for speaking out, and we're happy to receive your story at waitingforfios.nyc.
I have a question. Do you know if other businesses in your area, maybe not in your building, have similar situations, or maybe you're not in contact with them?
I know a couple of similar stories anecdotally. I'm happy to follow up off list with more specific details.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For coming forward.
So before I get to questions, I do want to give everyone a chance to speak who wanted to speak, but I will definitely answer that in a second. So there was a man named Manny Rivera had also signed up, and then I think there's this gentleman back here. Yes? Oh, sorry. I saw your hand was up, but if you come up and speak. You're fine. Yeah, we have plenty of time. Yeah, come on up and speak.
And I live on West 91st Street, and I thought I'd just make a couple of very brief remarks. One, it seems to be almost universally accepted that FiOS is a good thing, and people are definitely looking to have it, use it. It also kills two birds with one stone in that it provides internet service, and it's a substitute for traditional copper cable. And in many parts of the city, whichever borough you're in, the copper cable is old, it's decayed, and it's really a case of Verizon doing a Band-Aid job whenever they send out their valiant technicians to correct interruptions in service. It is clear from just about anybody I've spoken to that the other options like Time Warner, DirecTV to the extent it provides it, are inadequate. There are frequent, prolonged breaks in internet.
The council, a lot of complaints about just regular, plain old telephone service, known as POTS, I guess. And it's only recently that I've heard, although maybe some have heard more long-term, this constant push to go to FiOS. So, but I have a lot of constituents who do want to keep their regular phone service, and they want it to work, and they're paying for it. And Verizon is mandated to keep that service going. So I do think that we need to follow the law, and that's what the law is, and people shouldn't be pushing. Now, you can argue that FiOS, if you can get FiOS, it works better, but people have a right to the copper service. So I do think that's something that we need to not forget. And there are a lot of, particularly seniors, who want that service, and they want it to work. So I'm somebody who believes that if it's the law, you got to follow it.
In terms of complaints too, so you should make your, if you have a problem with your copper service, I mean, certainly tell Verizon in the first case, but then you can also tell DoIT at the New York City level and tell the Public Service Commission at the state level. The Public Service Commission has reduced the amount of disciplinary fines that it levies against Verizon and other phone companies, and so we believe that this has been a long-term factor in their inability to maintain the network, that there's been inadequate tools for regulatory action. So that's something we have to work on long term. But I would not accept, you really should not accept the deterioration. I know it's frustrating, but squeaky wheel gets the grease. We need to speak out and document what's happening. So definitely call 311 or tell DoIT through the internets, and also tell the Public Service Commission.
I remember, Gail, I don't want to show your age and my age, many, many years ago, this conversation came up when at the M&N facility on 57th Street, when there was a discussion about how much money should the cable companies give back to do public access programming. And Gail, I think you were on the board there. You was very involved, the only city council person involved in that with us, the producers there. It was the same problem. Time Warner just did not want to live up to their part of the deal. And I think that is what may be happening here. We may want to probably take maybe some look at having these continuation of these hearings to ensure that Verizon lives up to their part of a very, very good deal. Thanks.
But thank you so much. Let's keep up the fight. Keep following us, on waiting for FiOS. And I'm not just saying that as a plug. I'm saying because that's a very valuable organizing tool for us right now. And we'll talk after.